everybody. Welcome to Artists United Television. I'm Holly Million, the founder and executive director of Artists United. Artists United is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Oakland, California, working across the United States and worldwide. Our mission is to empower individual artists to create excellent art and to unite all artists to create social change. Our objective is to create the largest network of artists in all disciplines that the world has ever seen, and it looks like we're off to a good start. In the first 2 years of our existence, we have already signed up 32,000 people on our email list as free members of Artists United. Our objective now is to sign up 100,000 people by the end of 2019. If you'd like to be part of an artist-led movement whose goals are the economic and political empowerment of artists all around the world and using the power of our network to create social change, then please visit our website at artistsunited.net. That's artists, plural, united.net. Sign up on our email form and you'll become an automatic free member of Artists United. Some of the benefits of being a member of Artists United include being part of this very large network of artists, and you'll be able to share resources and tools with other artists. You also will receive our monthly e-newsletter, which has information that would benefit you. And we have live networking events throughout the United States and even worldwide. We've had events bringing artists together in Namibia, Spain, and most recently China. We have upcoming events in New Orleans and in Boston and in other parts of the United States. And we're also building an online platform that would connect all of the members of our network to each other so they can communicate directly. So it's an exciting time. Please join us at artistsunited.net. And now, without further ado, I want to welcome my guest, Jake Janzen. Welcome, Jake.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm glad to have you, and I'm glad you're over your cold. That's one of the wages of having small children. I know that they can be vectors for all kinds of things. So I'm glad to see you're back with us, and so happy to have you here. Jake is an attorney, and he came to us through Lisa Berger, who is on the board of directors of Artists United. And Jake is an attorney who works with artists. And what I really love about him is he's very down to earth. He's very approachable, and he has the interests of artists in mind, at heart. And he has joined the consulting team of Artists United. That's an online team that you can access at our website. Visit artistsunited.net and check out team and look for consulting team. These are individuals who have special knowledge, who are able to consult with our members at a discounted rate. So check out Jake. He's there to answer your legal questions.
Ready and waiting.
Ready and waiting. He's standing by. He is the operator who's standing by. And recently he was standing in front of a group of people at an Artists United networking event at Vinyl Dreams, a very cool record store in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood of San Francisco. And he was presenting on legal tips for artists. And Jake, when you were doing your talk, I was so hanging on every word, but what really struck me was when you came to the topic of moral rights. And I was sort of floored because I've heard the term moral rights before, but I've never given it any thought as an artist. And I really didn't think about what the moral rights of artists are. And so you blew my mind and you opened me up to a new way of thinking. And I thought, this is too good. We got to share this. So I'm first of all, thank you for coming on. And also just want to set the stage for what you're going to talk about. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself first?
Oh, yeah. Sure. My name is Jake Janzen. I'm a licensed California attorney. I run a solo art law practice called Start Art Legal. You can find me at startartlegal.com, or just look up Jake Janzen. So I work with clients throughout California. The majority of my clients are visual artists, but I work with a number of musicians and performing artists and not-for-profit organizations. That's what I do. I help people with contracts, help people with business needs. And one of the fun things I get to do is an educational component. I go around and give workshops and talk to people about the different things that they may not know about their art practices. and that was what I was privileged to do at Vinyl Dreams. I got to talk to folks there about things that I thought artists should know about, legally speaking, and business wise. And yeah, so the topic of moral rights came up, and in some ways, I'm surprised at how few artists I encounter are familiar with moral rights. But in another way, it's sort of a relatively new concept in the United States. So maybe it's not so surprising that artists aren't so familiar with the concept of moral rights. Um, so I can just launch into talking about what that is. I should say before I get too much further that what I say today is just meant for educational purposes. It's obviously not to be construed as legal advice. Nothing I do or say today in this video will create an attorney-client relationship between Holly and myself or anybody watching. But if you'd like to, by all means, get a hold of me and we can talk about what that means. But yeah, for today, it's just meant to be for your information, just to kind of bring to light a few topics that maybe will be helpful in your art practice and protecting yourself legally. And well, yeah. So today, not so much financially, but legally. So should I just launch into what
Yeah, that would be
a
great, Jake.
background or
Yeah,
yeah?
let's do that because I think that this is a topic that's very timely because
Mhm.
I can think of several examples now that you've enlightened me of artists who, in fact, have been impacted by this, and then if they had known more, they could have protected themselves.
Yeah,
So
it's sort of the idea of moral rights has been around for a long. I mean, it's been around for a long time in Europe, especially in France and Germany. But it didn't really make its way to the United States until very recently. In 1928, I believe, a number of countries signed what's called the Berne Convention, and that's where they all kind of became, and the United States actually joined that convention and became a part of the Berne Convention. But they didn't actually sign it into law until 1989. So
that's
this is all very
Bern,
new.
B-E-R-N,
Berne,
B-E-R-N.
Berne, yeah.
Okay, like Bern,
And so
Switzerland. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. So basically, the over. So I'll back up because I'm getting ahead of myself. The overarching sort of concept of like what moral rights are is independent of any sort of economic rights. We often think about the economic rights of authoring works, but independent of any sort of economic rights, even if you've sold something, even if you've transferred the copyright, even if you have no more monetary interest or pecuniary interest in a work, you still have what's called moral rights. And these are the basic moral rights are the rights to attribution, so the right to have your name placed on something that you did, the rights to do a work, to publish a work anonymously or pseudonymously, so to not have your name on it or to have a pen name on it.
That's a right.
Um, yeah, and also
I had
the
no
right.
idea.
Pardon?
I didn't even know that. You have the right to maintain anonymity when you're creating art.
Absolutely, and even when you register your copyrights, you can do it anonymously. There's no need to have your name attached to it. Um, and then the kind of big one is the right to the integrity of the work. And so when I'm talking about integrity, we're talking about an artist's ability to object to a work being altered or distorted or mutilated. And in particular, this protects alterations or modifications or distortions that would be prejudicial to the author's honor or reputation, basically. So that's the overarching kind of idea of what moral rights kind of came to be in Europe. And then when the Berne Convention actually kind of put it into writing, I have here, I can read you the language from the Berne Convention. I think it's worth reading. Sorry, I'm just trying to cue this up.
No, this is
Um,
great. Keep going.
so in the Berne Convention, then the actual language of what moral rights actually is as follows. It says, independent of the author's economic rights, and even after the transfer of the said rights, the author shall have the right to claim authorship of the work and to object to any distortion, modification of, or other derogatory action in relation to the said work, which would be prejudicial to the author's honor or reputation. So basically, what I said, but written nicely and succinctly. So with that, then finally in 1989, the United States went ahead and uh, 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 um, what's the word? Ratified the Berne Convention. And then directly after that, in 1990, we got the Visual Artists' Rights Act, which is commonly called VARA. And that's where moral rights is actually written into the U.S. federal law. It's part of the copyright law. And so that's where we get these. VARA gives us the right to claim authorship, the right to prevent the use of your name on any work that you did not create, um, the right to prevent the use of your name on any work that's been distorted, mutilated, or modified in a way that be prejudicial to your honor or reputation, and the right to prevent the destruction of a work if it's of quote unquote recognized stature.
Look at my
Um,
face. I mean, I'm looking at my own face and I'm like, this just floors me. I
it's
didn't,
pretty wild, yeah. And so the reason why it's particularly kind of shocking, especially to Americans, is because we have such a strong notion of personal property, right? We say, "I bought that painting. I'll throw it in the fire if I want to," and that's not always the case. So Vara, when you initially read it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. We have so many rights and so much power. Um, the problem is that it does butt up against these notions of personal property, right? And so it's not really found a lot of support in courts. And when I did the quote unquote recognized stature, so you can prevent the destruction of work of art if it's a quote unquote recognized stature, that recognized stature has really sort of been the Achilles heel of Vara. Um, a number of judges have found works that are world famous and of authors who are world famous, or I say authors, artists who are world famous, have found that they don't meet that level of recognized stature. And that was the case for years and years and years. Just recently, we saw the case of Five Points in Brooklyn, which was a large abandoned, not abandoned, but a large vacant building in Brooklyn that was a world famous graffiti site. So people traveled from all over the world to see world famous graffiti artists do murals and things like that. And they sort of had an informal understanding with the building owner that this was going on. And when the owner decided that he was going to demolish the building and basically sell the property to build condos, a number of the artists got together and tried to stop that to try to get some support for protecting the site as a work of a sort of a mecca for graffiti art. Um, the building owner didn't care for that, and one night overnight went and whitewashed all of the paintings, right? So a number of artists sued, and sure enough, for the first time, we have a successful big time VARA case where the court found that because the building owner willfully and wantonly destroyed these works without giving the artists the proper due process of being able to either remove them or to protect them, that he was actually guilty of 21 individual counts of VARA violations, each worth
oh,
$150,000.
oh,
So all of a sudden now we have a law that basically hasn't gotten a lot of protection or a lot of support in courts. All of a sudden now we have a federal court in New York that's basically finding a building owner $6.7 million, uh,
for graffiti art. It's
finding
kind of,
liability for $6.7 million because he destroyed these works. Um, so is this the norm? No. Are we gonna? Is no? I mean, can I go out tomorrow and
I want to
spray paint
start
on my
painting
neighbor's building?
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I go spray paint my neighbor's building and then sue them when they cover it up? No. There's a number of different factors at work here. For instance, they had permission initially to do it, and this is sort of an outlier, but it's got a lot of attention and it's got a lot of people talking and people thinking about it. And maybe you say, well, you know, I'm not a world famous graffiti artist, and what are the chances that this even applies to me at all? But what it's really done is it's had this ripple effect where I've seen, particularly in my practice, where now a lot of my muralists and street artists who are getting work are suddenly confronted with these 30-page documents where building owners want them to sign everything under the sun, because all of a sudden every building owner is scared to death that they're gonna be liable for millions and millions of dollars if they just try to make their building look nice after they think it's whatever. So the practical implication for a lot of artists is that they're being faced with a lot of paperwork that they haven't had before. And one of the things that you should keep in mind about your moral rights is that they can be waived, and a lot of times legal wording in documents will waive your moral rights. And they'll basically say that you waive your moral rights. It's not, they don't mince words so much, but it's something to be aware of. It's something that you can sign away. And maybe it's not so important to you, but maybe it's a negotiating chip that you want to
Can
use,
you
right?
really do that? Because I understand, like, if your kid's going to join summer camp, they'll make you sign a waiver of liability, and you sign it, but you don't
Right.
really, you aren't able to waive your
Well,
rights in that case, really.
yeah. I mean, these are sort of different. I mean, I think that a waiver of your moral rights would be upheld pretty commonly. As far as like waiving like liability of like anything that can happen at a summer camp, that's probably a lot easier to argue against. But if it's in clear cut language that you're waiving your moral rights, it's probably something that could be upheld. Obviously, anything can be argued, but if we're talking about arguing, then we're talking about paying attorneys, and we're talking about money, and we're talking about time, and we're talking about things that we don't want to waste, right? So just knowing that it's there and knowing that it's an option is pretty valuable in itself. Um, Whether or not it'll be upheld eventually, I mean, that's something that you could challenge and see, but not necessarily easy to do, right?
Can I ask a question of you, Jake? 'Cause this is
Absolutely.
so amazing. So, when was the Brooklyn case? How recently?
Oh, just last year.
It was last year. So this is
Yeah,
all brand new.
this is all brand new. So that was decided last year. The building owner obviously is gonna appeal, so we don't know, necessarily where that's gonna go. But I'm trying to think like other like practical applications. There was a bizarre case recently, where the artist Peter Doig was sued to prove that he wasn't the author of a painting. That was a weird one. There was
What?
yeah, it's really wild. And again, it's your right to say that you didn't paint something, and obviously he didn't. So I'll back up. There was a prison guard from Thunder Bay, Canada, who said that years and years ago, Peter Doig was an inmate at Thunder Bay, and a 17-year-old inmate, and painted a painting that he gave to this prison guard. Peter Doig claims, "I've never been to this prison. I don't know what you're talking about. I never painted that painting." But sure enough, years and years later, somebody by the name of Peter Doig is selling, very, very valuable works. So this prison guard says, "Wait, I have a Peter Doig," and he wants to sell it too. So uh, he tries to sell it. Peter Doig, of course, says, "That's not mine. I didn't paint it." And so he takes Peter Doig to court, and Peter Doig has to prove that he didn't author this work. And obviously, he has an interest in doing that because it would affect his market and everything like that. Ultimately, Peter Doig was able to prove that he didn't author the work, and ultimately he got his fees paid. But it was a huge headache and a huge, uh, uh, um, uh, you know, to do over this ridiculous thing. But it has practical implications. There's going to be times where it might be worthwhile for you to disclaim ownership of something,
I
or if you sell someone a work and they so mutilate it, and they put some political message on it that you don't want to be a part of, by all means, you have the right to get your name taken off of it. I had a client who created a memorial, a big public memorial in a city, and you know, and it stood for years and years and years. And over time, a number of neighborhood groups decided they wanted to do different things with that space. They wanted to sort of commercialize it. They wanted to make it well. So the memorial is very much supposed to be a reflective space and a meditative space and a space to honor the subjects of the memorial. And these neighborhood groups really wanted to turn it into a tourist destination. And so in that case, I was successfully able to write to the mayor of the city and write to a number of neighborhood organizations and say, look, my client has these moral rights. This is the intention of the space. If you're going to alter it or mutilate it or anything, then we have the right to remove the works. We have the right to take the name off of it. She was particularly lucky because she never transferred ownership of it. She was never paid for the works or anything, so she actually still had legal title to the works. But one of the options really was to say, okay, if you do that, then we're going to take our name off of it, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And that was really powerful. And that got the ear of the mayor of the city. That got the ear of a number of organizations, and it really was able to halt what was going to be ultimately the quote unquote destruction of the works, because it was really going to alter what they meant in that space.
Can I ask you a quick
So there's
question?
some there's
Oh,
powerful practical applications. Absolutely.
no, you're on a roll, and I love it. I don't want to interrupt, but I do want to ask a question. You mentioned something there in that story, and by the way, the stories are really helping. It's very good to illustrate.
Yeah.
But you said something about fortunately she had never been paid. So is
Well,
there some place where moral rights diverge when you've been paid?
no, I
No.
shouldn't have thrown that in there because
Oh,
that really
okay.
does. That really does. No, and we
Gotcha.
actually no, I explained that really does kind of muddy it up, because so much of what we think about the rights of authorship are connected to money, right? And the ability to A, sell the work initially, B, then have the copyright rights so we can reproduce, we can license, we can do things like that with that. Um, Moral rights is completely independent of those monetary rights. The reason why I said fortunately she didn't transfer title was because that gave us the option of just getting a bulldozer and going in there and removing them. because she still physically, she still legally owned the works. But even if she hadn't, even if she had signed the title away, then we had the moral rights argument that said, okay, we don't actually quote unquote own this anymore, but we're able to remove her name. We're able to do all these different things and stop basically the destruction of the
So the
works.
money doesn't really interfere with your moral rights, in other
This is
words.
independent of the money. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I can think of two different cases that I'm familiar with that I'll bring up because they do touch on this, I believe. So one is that I've worked with a lot of graphic designers over the years, and there have been graphic designers that I've hired to draw a logo or to create a
Uh huh.
website. And
Uh
in
huh.
their agreements, they'll often say, this is not a work for hire.
Right.
I own this art, and if you're going to
Right.
alter it later, you need to give me notice and ask my permission. And at the
Right.
time, I was like, no, wait a minute, this is a work for hire. I am
Right.
asking you to make a logo for my exclusive use.
Right.
How can you claim that? So is that an issue where it's a little black and or not black and white, gray?
No, it's pretty black and white. So if you, so so people oftentimes get commissioned works and works made for hire confused. So you're commissioning an artist to create something for you. Um, if it was a work made for hire basically means that it's something that they're doing within the scope of their employment for you. So if this is somebody who you can tell when to show up to work, where to sit, when to take lunch, when to come back from lunch, when to go home, and on and on and on. If that's the case, then what they're creating is a work made for hire, right? Then you're an employee, and so it's like if you're working for Microsoft and you create software, you can't run off and go do your own thing. Like that's Microsoft's actual intellectual property. So where if it's actually a work made for hire, then you as the commissioning, that's the employer, would then actually own the intellectual property and own the copyright. When artists say this is not a work made for hire, they're saying I'm taking your money for this one-off, but this design that I'm creating, by all means, use it for what we agree you can use it for. But if 10 years down the line, I want to license it to this or that or do this or that, like I'm still retaining those rights. So that's actually a pretty black and white one, and it's interesting. You literally need the words "work." This is a work made for hire in the contract for it to be a work made for hire, unless it is something that falls within the scope of employment.
Okay,
So
good to know. Those designers knew what they were doing. They're way ahead of me.
they
So
did. They're
so
protecting themselves.
so that was one example, but there's another one that comes to mind. I didn't even think about this, the right to anonymity. So in the field of filmmaking, for
Uh huh.
many decades, there's been this tradition um, for this purpose. Do you know who Alan B. Smithy is?
No, I'm not familiar.
There is no such
Oh.
person. That
Okay.
actually is a convention when a director is doing a film that they don't feel proud of. Maybe it's softcore porn, maybe it's
Uh huh.
trashy, a B-grade movie, something they're not proud of, and they
Sure.
don't want their name on it because it could damage their reputation as a director. They'll be
Mm-hmm.
credited in the film as Alan B. Smithy. And it became a
Okay.
tradition. If you look it up, you'll see there's a lot of films where the director is Alan B. Smithy. Alan B.
Yeah, that's good
Smithy's the
to know.
most prolific director of all time. So
Scandalous director.
scandalous, and his work is crappy. So so there's an example that it just evolved
Yeah.
in the film world because they wanted to protect directors from their own.
Right. Yeah. No, and I mean I get it with I register copyrights for some of my graffiti artists, muralists, street artists, who have legit, practices where they do murals for buildings where everything's in writing and it's all by permission and everything, and they create some of these iconic images and they want the copyright protections, but they don't necessarily want their name attached to it because they might at 3 a.m. be doing work somewhere else where they're not necessarily supposed to be doing it. And so in that case, even the copyright office, when you register your copyrights online, they allow you to do it anonymously, by all means, or you can do a pseudonym. You can have your real name and your art practice name as well. Yeah, it's protected,
Well,
and for that reason, for a number of reasons, but yeah.
I could talk to you for a long time. In fact, we may need to bring you back on the show to talk
Yeah.
about other issues. Is there anything further you want to add to this issue of moral rights? Just any tips for artists to be aware of as they leave from here?
Oh, well, I think the big one was just, if you're signing anything, yeah, by all means, look for the waiver of your moral rights in there. Also, look for the work made for hire language, because these can have big implications. And definitely, I just would say, before you sign anything, if you're unsure about anything, contact a professional. Even if it's somebody who is an artist who has lots of experience with contracts, get a hold of them, or your friendly local attorney.
Jake Janzen, a member of the Artists United consulting team. Check it
Always happy
out.
to.
And can you give us your website again, please?
Yeah, it's all one word. It's Start Art Legal. StartArtLegal.
.com.
StartArtLegal.com. Yep.
Okay, and you can also find Jake on our website under consulting team for artistsunited.net. And I want to thank you, Jake, for being here. And I just want to give a few more, a little bit more information on Artists United for those who are watching. We're a worldwide movement of artists in all disciplines, the largest movement of artists that the world has ever seen. Our mission is to empower individual artists to create excellent art and to unite all artists to create social change. Currently with 32,000 members. Please sign up on our website at artistsunited.net. That's artistpluralunited.net. On our email list, that'll make you a free member. If you'd like to get more involved, you can also donate to support this work by hitting the donate button on our website and making a tax-deductible donation. You can volunteer and get involved directly. We have many committees, and there are people all over the United States who are part of our U.S. program committee of artist volunteers who are helping organize events, spreading the word, lending their skills to what we're doing. I also want to mention one other thing that's related to Jake, to your work. We have a partner organization called First Amendment Coalition, and they have agreed to make their legal hotline, which is free to journalists facing First Amendment issues,
Cool.
available to Artists United members on a priority basis. So they're extending it to help artists facing First Amendment issues. So visit firstamendmentcoalition.org and mention that you found out about it through Artists United. And if you'd also like to be on this show, we're looking for guests who can speak to different topics of interest to artists worldwide. So let me know. And again, there's many, many ways to support the work, but it's great that, Jake, you were here. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be seeing you soon, maybe at the Sequoia Diner in Oakland, California.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
Jake. Bye-bye.
Right,
Thanks, everybody, for coming. See you soon.